Welcome back. This is a brief biography of our Nigeria, then and now. Let us take a look, some 40-50 years back, about how Nigeria was brought into being. When Nigeria achieved independence from British colonial rule on October 1st, 1960, the prospects appeared promising and expectations for the future of the country were high. Nigeria was the most populous country in Africa, and the potential for economic growth was great. Buoyed largely by the discovery of commercial quantities of petroleum in the Niger Delta region in 1958, Nigeria was dubbed the Giant of Africa, and many people both inside and outside the country believed that Nigeria would so rise to claim a leading position in African and world affairs, which it has presently. But what has changed? A lot has changed. Nigeria also saw itself as a beacon of hope and progress for other colonized peoples emerging from the yoke of alien rule. By 1970s, however, Nigeria's stability and prestige had been greatly damaged by a decade of political corruption, economic underdevelopment, and military coups. Most damaging, however, was the culmination of these problems in a 2.5-year civil war from 1967 to 1970. The rent the country along regional and ethnic lines killed between 1 and 3 million people and nearly destroyed the fragile federal bonds that held together the Nigerian state. At all this level, there is no civil protest, but civil war. The underlying cause of all the problems that Nigeria experienced in the 1960s and has experienced since then is what is often called the national question. That is, what is Nigeria? Who are Nigerians? How does a country go about developing a meaningful national identity? The geographical area now known as Nigeria was created by the British colonial administration in 1914, not by indigenous peoples themselves. That means the country was created for us. Thereafter, the people within the borders of Nigeria were known to the world as Nigerians. But in reality, the designation meant little to most people, whose lives continued to be primarily centered on local communities that had existed for hundreds and thousands of years. The regional and federal emphasis of the constitutions of the 1950s further underdetermined the development of a unified national consciousness by determining that access to power at the national level was to be derived from holding power at the regional level. The largest ethnic groups in each region was the Hausa Fulani, Yoruba, and Igbo in the northern, western, and eastern regions respectively. Therefore, came to dominate their respective regions and to contest for power at the federal level. Within each region, ethnic minorities often opposed the political domination of the large ethnic groups, and as a result, they felt increasingly alienated from the political process, creating even further subdivisions of identity that detracted from the development of a single encompassing Nigerian national identity. Since power derived most immediately from associations on a subnational level, there seemed to be very little to gain in domestic politics from identifying on a national level. As a result, when Nigeria became an independent sovereign state in 1960, in many ways it was a state without a nation. The problem of national unity was apparent in the early 1960s, and Nigerians addressed it in many ways. Artists, scholars, and some politicians went about trying to construct a unique Nigerian culture through their art, writing, speech, and legislation. A lot of efforts were made to promote a strong central state and a state-run economy that focused on development initiatives across Nigeria. All these efforts were meant to bring Nigerians closer together politically, economically, and culturally to promote commonalities and downplay differences. Ultimately, however, these efforts failed, largely because of the overwhelming trend in the political sphere towards consolidating power at the regional level at any cost. Official corruption, rigged elections, ethnic baiting, bullying, and thuggery dominated the conduct of politics in the First Republic, which existed from 1960 to 1966. The need to build a fight around a unified national identity for Nigeria was not a new development in the 1960s. Indeed, the creation of a pan-Nigeria consciousness had been preoccupation of nationalist activists since at least the 1930s. By the 60s, however, the desire for a sense of national unity had spread beyond the political realm to encompass cultural activities as well. Many people began searching for ways to develop a distinct and recognizable national culture in order to bring Nigerians together as a single people and to grow national pride by contributing something distinctly Nigerian to world culture in general. The issue of language was a tricky one in the development of national identity. On the one hand, English was clearly the language of the colonial past, an alien language that had no roots in Nigeria's cultures or traditions. For this reason, many felt its use should be limited in an independent Nigeria. And at the same time, however, Nigeria itself was a creation of the colonial past, and the shared colonial experience was one of the major factors. A lot has happened between what? Between the politicians, the atheists, those who want power, and many more. But all this economic instability, peacefulness, thuggery, and things doesn't ever and never happen during the colonialization in Nigeria. What changes? It was when the country was handed over as a state, not a nation, to the Nigerians. That's peoples living in Nigeria. All this happened to the development up to 1970 from the colonialization without a single protest and during a civilian rule. Whenever these kind of things are happening, a soldier or a military personnel was trained just to save lives, was trained to save properties, was trained to see that everything is in peace state. So they can't stay and see a lot of things happening. Some peoples from inside and outside just demolishing their country. Say they took over. That's when the first coup appeared. I will give an explanation of what happens in the coup, who did it, how they plotted, and whatever happened that took us to where we are today. But before then, let me just give a hint on the economic development we have as at then. The expansion of formal education facilities was part of a wider economic plan on the part of the First Republic to make Nigeria wealthier and more self-sufficient. In 1962, thus after independence in the First Republic, the government introduced the first National Development Plan, FNDP, designed to run until 1968, focusing on investment in agriculture, industry, and education. The FNDP anticipated an annual growth rate of 4%. This is what the late Commander-in-Chief, General Sani Abacha, has adopted and created an authority named Petroleum Trust Fund. It is to serve as FNDP because the FNDP was demolished and it has worked. We have seen in all those times, Nigeria is one. We don't protest against anything, despite we have different cultures, different religions, different ethnic groups. We are still one, and that is what we want now. We still want to be one. We are not divided, and we can't let anyone divide us. So, In many ways, the FNDP provisions were in keeping with the previous development plans that had been in place since in the end of the Second World War, thus even during colonialization. In some ways, however, the development planning initiatives of the First Republic were more ambitious than previous plans. First, whereas colonial development plans were overwhelmingly interested in increasing agricultural output to boost the export economy. As of that time, we are exporting the highest cotton, the highest groundnut across the sub-Saharan Africa, which even the income generated from that business was used to build this long rail that transport things across Nigeria. In manufacturing, tobacco, food processing, and beverages became the leading growth sectors. Import substitution was also a main goal of manufacturing development. Industrial development grew most in the mining sector, as at that time, with petroleum making up the bulk of the increase. Nigeria has a production of crude oil grew from 46,000 barrels per day in 1961 to 600,000 barrels per day in 1967. Now, take a look at this. As of 2012, Nigeria is producing 1.2 million barrels per day. In 1967, Nigeria is producing 600,000 barrels per day. Can you calculate the ages between 1967 to 2010? So, between 61 to 67, we have an additional of 554,000 barrels in production, in quantity. But within about 40 years, we have not more than 600,000 barrels per day increase. What change? It is the people inside. We don't want to live in peace. Our leaders are from us. The rulers, we vote for them. We elect them to rule us. And whatever they are doing it to the best of their knowledge, to the best of their capacity, considering the situation, the economical, the peaceful, and the amenitical situation of the country. That is what almost brought about this downfall of the economy, downfall of peace, progress, increase, kidnapping increase, and many more. But we assure that our leaders have strong mind, have strong vision, and are willing to even sacrifice their lives in order to say that Nigerians have succeed. Nigerians have get a better life now and future for themselves, their children, and their 4 children that will come in the nearest future. All we need is, we don't need to protest. Protest doesn't give anything except consequences. The aftermath of the protest, like we can see around the world and like it happens close presently, or not more than just 3 years ago of the EndSARS protest, we have seen there are so many people now in prison, many days.